Welcome to Red Hoop Talk, and tonight is our open talking circle. My name is Shannon O'Loughlin. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and am your illustrious host or whatever for Red Hoop Talk. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and please, everyone out there in the internets, wherever you're coming from, give us comments, say hello, and I'm going to put in the chat right now the link where you can join us live and on camera at this open talking circle. And this evening, our subject is spring renewal and rebirth. What do you do to come out of the winter and out of the cold into the warm air of spring, or maybe you've just had a struggle in your life that you've been able to come out of? How have you kind of rebirthed yourself in a good way and staying close to culture? With me tonight so far is Pura Fe. Pura, how are you?
Fine, and you?
I am good. Good. What's going on up there?
We had one more last dump of snow, but it went away. And just been out in the bush with some young girls from a community, Dillon. They're reserved. They're teenagers. They're Dene, and so we just had like a camp, 3-4 day camp. And with Green Arrow and White Lightning, we're a team of really good people up here in the north that are working with youth.
Oh,
so that's what's going on up here.
Oh man, must have been intense.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was intense.
Yeah.
Good. Very good.
Good. A little bit of rebirth happening.
Yeah.
And renewal.
Strengthening. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So what else is going on in the world? I know today is National Pizza Day. I have my cheap slice of pie here. And you know how we used to make pizza in Oklahoma? So, because there's nowhere you're going to go in Oklahoma. I don't care if it's some bougie place in Oklahoma City or Tulsa. You're not going to find good pizza in the state of Oklahoma. So what you do to make pizza, if you're an Indian in Oklahoma, is first you have to find someone who can make fry bread and who has all the ingredients, right? So you got to have that, because that's going to be your crust. And then you get the cheapest ragu that you can find at the store and your commodity cheese and whatever meat product you have in the fridge. Bam, there's your pizza. That is the best Oklahoma pizza you're ever going to get in Oklahoma. Do y'all like pizza up there in the north?
Oh yeah, everybody they all buy what do they call it? DiGiorno, whatever, in the frozen. Yeah, right. Go to the grocery store and you pack up.
That's pretty much the fry bread.
Yes.
That's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's
one time I just took a bunch of bread slices and did that. I did. I put the ragu and the commodity cheese and put it in the fridge. In the stove. And the girls just loved it. They thought it was awesome.
Man, you can't go wrong with red sauce and cheese, man. You put that on anything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yep. So everyone, I hope you're enjoying your pizza out there. Please give us a shout out. Let us know where you are coming from, what part of Indian country you're coming from. And if you don't think you're coming from any part of Indian country, I invite you to look again. Everywhere you stand is the land of Indigenous peoples. Tonight, please feel free to join us. I see someone in the waiting room someone I know who's going to make this conversation fun as hell, Nadema Agard. How are you doing?
Oh my God! Look at that!
Wow.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I love
someone
it.
just walked into the house. Hold on.
Oh, hi, Shannon. I love your hair.
Yeah, hey, I cut it all off.
Everybody loves that hair.
I don't know why everyone, the boys always like longer hair. Boys like long hair. It's just a thing. But when you get to a certain age, when you have this big thing on your head, it's just like
Well, I just keep it long, but I keep it
in the back
out of the way. I just don't have the patience to deal with hairdos, so I just
exactly
part it in the middle, comb it, pull it back, and if I want to get fancy, I make a bun.
Woo. There you go. So how are you doing, Nadema? I haven't had a chance to talk to you in a while. What's new in New York?
This is live, right?
Yeah, we're live.
It's public.
It's out there.
All right. So I'm not going to get into details, but I've been kind of out of the situation. I've been in a situation where I haven't been able to live my life the way I usually do, but now I'm making a comeback.
Woohoo! Well,
and I went out to after I had my vaccine. And I had my 2 vaccines because I was like, no one was coming into my apartment and I wasn't going anywhere unless my life depended on it. And so this past week, not only did I go to the laundry room that I hadn't been in for 18 months.
Wow.
But I went out to hang out with the neighbors. So it was like, I felt like I was, at a cotillion ball and I came out, because they were like, oh my God, it's her, it's Nadema. Oh my God. And these ladies, they are like the staunch neighborhood ladies that they grew up in the neighborhood. They went to school here. They got married here. They are staunch Inwood ladies. And they are a trip. They are so funny. So they kind of keep guard outside my building. There's an area where you go down steps and there's like a seating area. So they kind of get, they kind of like know everybody in the neighborhood. Like if you sit there, everybody that comes up the steps or passes by, they know. And every dog's name they know, because Inwood is like a small town. It really is. New York is a lot of small towns. So, people know all the kids, go to the Little League, and we have the Little League, and, most of the people in the neighborhood go to the Catholic Church, Good Shepherd, and there's another one, St. Jude, and Our Lady of Martyrs. So anyway, people, know people for a really long time, and it's such a great neighborhood because everybody's every nationality, and it's, they just get along so well, Latino, Hispanic, African American, Irish, Italian, whatever you are. It's just like everyone, it's such a model for the rest of the country, because growing up in New York has been like, it was like it always international, Yeah. So I grew up in the neighborhood, in this neighborhood. I moved here when I was 13 years old. So I know those old school ladies. I know what they're talking about because I remember the neighborhood back then. And it was, it was a great neighborhood.
So was that during relocation? Was it during that time?
What?
Was it during, did you move to?
No, I was born in New York City. Okay. I just moved from another part of New York City to Inwood.
Oh, gotcha.
I moved to Inwood when I was 13 or 14. I remember, like, it was when Marilyn Monroe committed suicide, because I remember the radio coming on, and I was doing my mom's hair, putting her hair in hair rollers, and all of a sudden I heard the news. I'll never forget where I was, that Marilyn Monroe, got committed suicide. So it was in the 60s.
Yeah, gotcha.
And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who we knew at the time as Lou Alcindor, lived in the building. I lived in building 1. My friend Norbert and his family lived in building 1. And then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think he lived in building 3, which was, there were 7 buildings in the housing complex. So we had it was just a great neighborhood, and everybody got along, and there were all kind of people, Asian people, African American people, Native people, Hispanic people, Jewish people, Italian people, Irish people. I mean, it was just like that. And a lot of the people were like a product of mixed marriages, or like I had a girlfriend, she was Jewish and Italian. And then my friend Norbert and his family, their father was Filipino and their mother was Cuban and Seminole. Mm. And back in those days, people didn't ask people what they were. We never talked about it, to each other. And then one day I was talking to them, and they said, and his younger brother, I always thought she was Puerto Rican. And he says, no, my mom wasn't Puerto Rican. My mom was Native American and Cuban. She was Seminole and Cuban. So, that's the way it was. People were like, there was these sisters that I was friends with. Their father was from the Danish West Indies, and their mother was Puerto Rican. I mean, I don't think I had any friend that was like one nationality. I mean, they were all, and there was another family. The mother was Puerto Rican, the father was Cuban. And then there was another family, Edith Hernandez. Her mother was Dominican, and then her father was Puerto Rican. So, and then there was Paul Alley. His mother was Irish, his father was from India. So these were the kind of people that I interacted with as, a teenager. So it never was, I just can't even imagine what it'd be like being in a community where people were all the same nationality.
Well,
of course.
So like a traditional Native person, Nadema, do you realize that you've been talking about everybody else except yourself? So would you mind introducing yourself a little bit to everyone who doesn't know you?
Okay. Well, my name's Nadema Agard, and I'm Eastern Band Cherokee on my mom's side, and on my father's side, I'm Virginia Powhatan and Standing Rock Lakota, or Sihasapa Lakota. I mean, my family, my relatives that are Agards are from Standing Rock. So I have a Lakota name, and it's Winyanluta, which means woman holy red. I used to translate it to red woman, and then I said, why am I doing this? Because English doesn't translate well. So why am I making an excuse for the English language? No, I'm just going to I'm going to have my name, as it is. Yes. And then my Eastern Cherokee name is Giga Geshuat, which is Red Earth. So that's my moniker, Red Earth Studio is my consulting, multicultural and Native arts consulting business.
Yes.
So
and talking about like our subject tonight is rebirth and regeneration, and thinking about both of you, Pura and you, Nadema, your art, your art and Pura's music. There's a lot there about rebirth and regeneration. When I visited you in your house there in New York, Nadema, you showed me all your amazing art that you had on the walls that you did. Can you talk a little bit about what you focus on a lot in your art?
Yeah, well, as a woman, as a Native woman, as an Indigenous person, as a world citizen, I come from a place that is rooted in indigenousness, in indigeneity, but I'm a global person. So my work is kind of rooted in that core indigenous vein. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's the I've been an art major in college and stuff, and looking at art from different cultures, people make art for different reasons. And for me, art is like a prayer. And a lot of the art that I do is inspired by one of the things that not many of my works are inspired by Black Elk's vision, which is his vision of the four sacred colors. And so a lot of my work has that Lakota vision, but it's really contemporary. So I did a piece called Earth Mother and the Children of the Four Colors, or the Four Directions. And it's this cruciform which has four embryos, and they all coming out of the Mother Earth with umbilical cords. And so when I moved to Bismarck, because I was living in Bismarck and working on the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation as their repatriation director, and my cousin Aggie, who we call Aggie, but her name's Geraldine, she came to visit me, and she's real traditional. She's Lakota speaking, So when she was sitting there and she was looking at that piece, and then she said to me, "What made you do that?" And I thought, oh my God, she's going to give it to me. She's going to, tear me to pieces. And then she says, "I really like it." And I found like the traditional people, even though I thought maybe they wouldn't like my work because it's like kind of contemporary and cutting edge, that they really dug it. They really understood it, because at the core, it was the spirit, Yeah. And the pieces that I did on my Facebook page, um, the four virtues. Uh, Lakota people have said that they are very traditional images that I had no idea, of how I was making these pieces, and we channel stuff um, all the time. So so then I know you saw my Moonbreast Mothers piece,
Yeah.
and that's about nurturing the female. And then I have a lot of images that have to do with birth and the feminine power of giving birth, and about that place where we give birth, which is the sacred door. And my point is to bring it out of the realm of the vulgar, and to put that door in a place that is considered sacred, because it is a place where we come from the spirit world into this world. It's a sacred door. And I had that one piece because I took it around, and I mean, my artwork has its life of its own. So I took it around to different homes where there were girls that were recovering from drug addiction and prostitution. And I told them, they looked at my artwork, and I explained to them, what that represented. And they said, I said, that's a sacred place, and as I explained it to them, they said, gee, wish somebody had told me that a long time ago. I really got into details, but it was just like a teaching moment. And I remember taking that piece, the Earth Mother piece, to a conference of women, and all these women sat around the piece, and then one of them was an elder lady, European American woman, and she started crying. She says, your work reminds me of my mother. She had so many kids, and she could, she had to deal with so much. So that's a lot about what my work is about. And the Moonbreast Mothers is really a cross. It transcends time and space. It even is it's almost like the spiritual boundaries. I'm jumping, I'm crossing spiritual boundaries in this piece because it depicts the moon divinity in 3 different cultures: Hawaiian, Greco-Roman, and let's see, Greco-Roman, Hawaiian, and Polynesian. No, Polynesian is Hawaiian. Then there's Greco-Roman, and I'm trying to think. The Greco-Roman is based on the image of Diana of Ephesus, or the moon goddess in the Greco-Roman tradition. And then the other goddess is Coyolxauhqui, the moon goddess of the Aztec community. So Mexica people, actually, it's not really the Aztec people, but the Mexica people. So that's the depiction. So in the piece, I have many breasts, but that represents the many breasts of the figure that I saw in Tivoli Gardens when I went to Rome. And that blew my mind. I was 20 years old, and I saw this figure. It was a fountain, and all the water was coming out of the nipples. And I was like, wow, I never saw anything like that before, because we live in a puritanical country, you know what I mean? So when I went to Italy, which isn't a puritanical country, it was like, wow. And I never forgot it. And then the story that I learned about the moon goddess Coyolxauhqui was through the Colorado sisters. They did a dramatic presentation at some symposium that I organized, and they told the story of Coyolxauhqui, who had 400 brothers who were stars. And the Cherokees also have that story about 400 brothers who are stars. So it was like, wow, So I depicted the stars to reference Coyolxauhqui, and then the Hawaiian one, that was the hardest one. I couldn't figure out how to do her. I said, how am I going to represent the Hawaiian moon goddess? Her name is Hina. And I didn't know how to, I didn't know how to depict her. So I took a break from working on the piece, and I went to NYU because they had it was during the month of May. They had their Asian Pacific Heritage Month, and they would have all these Hawaiian people coming in and doing workshops and doing films. And so I went to this film series, and I was in the auditorium, and this woman came out and she says, we're not going to have the film today, right now. We're going to have a film, but we're not going to do the film for the next half an hour, because I'm going to talk to you about Hina. And I just sat in my chair like stunned, and I turned to my left and I turned to my right, like, did I just hear she say she's talking about Hina? She's not going to show a film? And that she told me, and then I knew Hina wanted me, she wanted to be in the artwork. She channeled through that woman, and that woman told me that Hina is often manifested as coral. So then in the piece, I paint with coral paint the 4 phases of the moon to delineate them, and that's the presence of Hina. So she was like, this was like a cross-cultural thing, and I loved it,
Wow. So Pura, how do you two know each other?
From the New York American Indian Community House.
Oh, yeah, good. Of course. Like our community, that the American Indian Community House is, we all, used to hang at the community house.
Yeah.
And we all knew each other from the community house, because, in New York City, Indians live in every different borough, and there's no Indian neighborhood like, say, in St. Paul or Minneapolis, where you've got the area where a lot of Native people live. But New York, that's not the way I mean, back in the day, there were a lot of people from Six Nations in Brooklyn,
Right.
but other than, Six Nations, a lot of us were all over the place.
Yeah.
And so it was the one place that we all came together and,
We did a lot
had
of
our
things
our
together.
community.
Yeah. Did a
So if
lot.
you lived in New York, probably you knew each other,
Yeah.
Right, right. So, Pura, coming back to this, I I wish you would have had Nadema's art for your week with these young women. I'm not sure if it would have helped or not, but I hope it. What did you come away with that experience with, as far as working with young women who, when we were talking before, it sounded like they were a little bit in crisis.
Yeah. Well, I think I walked away with knowing that they need extreme support because they're going up against community that are against them. They're against them for growing. They're against them for speaking out about the abuse that they endure by family members. Today standing up to talk about what's going on to you personally in your body, your mind, your spirit, everything. These girls would have to face talking about their own relatives.
Mm.
So, and so many are taught you don't talk about this. Just be quiet. Never mind. This happens to all of us. It just doesn't matter. So how are we going to break this? It needs to stop and it needs to change. So we sat with women like this, young girls
Mm.
who are scared. They're scared to death. And a lot of them, they end up ending their life because they don't see a way out. They don't see anything. And then they're told you can't even drum, you can't do this, you can't touch that, shut up. So it's just, so it was a good thing for them to get away and together and come into a lodge with older women who hand them a drum and then hand them all kinds of traditional teachings that tell them, this is not the way it's supposed to be. Just showing them purpose, that we're born here for a reason, that we choose our families when we come into this world, that we have a reason why we are tested and so forth. And so it's in some ways kind of giving them tools to warrior up.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to, if they want change, they're going to have to be the ones to change it. And they're going to have to band together and learn how to become that woman's society that we've had. And we also, as the older women, have to be there. We have to be able to be there to help support them. And yeah, that was kind of what a weekend or a week, just to, and you don't want to say the wrong things. You want to be able to tell them things that are really going to make a difference. You want to be, as supportive and as real as possible, and really hand them something that's going to help them get up and do what they need to do for themselves. And then you pump them up and they see a light and so forth. And at any moment, something horrible could happen to
Mm.
one of them. Are they going to be strong enough to get through it? Are they going to know how to stand together? And because these girls are also taught to fight each other. You know what I mean? They're pinned. So we had to break that apart. There's so many things that you have to break apart. There's so much that colonization purposely put in, and so it just keeps going and going and gets worse and worse and bigger and bigger. And it's yeah, we need these teachers to come in that really have a way of unlocking this and showing them that they are the power, that they are the medicine, and that they have to work together. So it was kind of it's hard. You don't want to see anything horrible happen to them. They're so sweet and they're so young. And then, I went through a lot of hell myself. And I think that's the reason why I ended up in this. I didn't choose this. Someone came and got me and they said, you know this stuff and you know this. So just, and I'm like, oh, okay. And you go in and then you're like, oh my God, so it's a lot. It's a lot. So I bring a grandmother drum that my husband helped me make. I told him what I wanted. And up here, the women are shunned and shamed and told not that they can't touch the drum and that they can't do all kinds of things. And a lot of them are also the same young girls that are being raped and molested, from little children on up, by their own family members. So it's no longer the missionaries; they're gone.
Yeah.
It's now that's just taken such a deep root in so many families, people that have survived residential school, and this is what we're dealing with. So it's a lot, but it's good work, and it has to happen. And as that one group of women with Michelle Shenandoah, it's called rematriate. It's the same. So it's like we need that everywhere. And rematriate, and these are matriarchal peoples that are completely turned into the opposite. So those were some of the teachings that we had to bring in, and the origins of drums and origins of pipes and rattles and rites and so forth. It's like everything is birthed through women, and so they have no idea. And it was just like so much was lifted the more we talked and said and told them and gave them all these teachings and showing them wheels and the moons and everything from their own environment and nations. And it was really helpful for them. It really helped them to feel rooted, grounded. We're showing them boundaries. Yeah, so it's, they really did a number up here in the north in Saskatchewan and throughout northern communities all over in Canada, because they're so isolated. And maybe some were so isolated that nobody got to them. But then there's other remote and rural areas where missionaries and boarding schools were set up. So those communities really had it rough.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are afraid to even show their identity. They think it's bad.
Yeah. I did some work in Montana and regarding violence against women, and was really amazed. You don't understand it unless you are there or unless you've been there. These communities are so small, so when there's domestic violence, when there's any kind of molestation or sexual violence or domestic violence, there's nowhere for these women to go where they can protect themselves. There's no one who can protect them because everyone knows everyone.
Right.
And oftentimes their abuser may have power in the community that they don't have. In fact, this one place that we went, the person was related to the tribal court judge who was adjudicating the matter, right? So it's incredible how there's really no real separated safety net for these women. And I think, you know, with the whole VAWA and the increased jurisdiction over people who commit domestic violence in Indian country, whether they're native or non-native. I mean, there's more of that here in the States now, a little bit, but it's still, you know, you have to have resources to have a program like that. And a lot of the programming, what is killing me, and I'm seeing this more and more as you get into how money comes out of the government and into communities, it is so painted with restrictions and limitations, and then you only get the money for 3 years if you're lucky, and then it's gone. And so there's no real tools to help build sustainability that's going to continue to protect women from domestic violence. There's no continued, unless the tribe has resources that it's willing to spend to support these efforts. I mean, it has to be, and that's not the way it's always been, right? You're talking about our communities, our nations. We would kick out people that acted like that.
Right.
Right? They weren't allowed to be here. They did not keep our communities in balance.
Right.
They would be banned. They'd, you know, and pushed out of the tribe. I don't know why it's okay to do that now. Are we really that backwards today that we wouldn't see that harming our women is a problem? It's confusing, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it is, but then again, you know, you have to look at, and that's how I had to undo it for the girls. And my first tool is actually I use Aaron Carapella's, you know, Tribal Nations map.
No.
You know, remember Aaron Carapella?
Mhm.
Well, he's got that one map of Turtle Island with all the traditional territories and how it looked, kind of, you know, give them an idea of all the traditional territories and how strong we were. And there's no border lines. There's no, you know, it's just tribal nations, right? That's the first thing I put out for them to see. And we talk about all these different nations, and we talk about the roles that people played. We talk about the travel and trade. We talk about the food systems and, you know, everything, all the different systems and the governing systems and the matriarchy and what land was and what it meant to, and what was really rich and poor, the completely different value system. I talked to them about all of that and what their place would be in these societies. And that was really mind-blowing for them. And then we talk about, you know, and then he's got that other map, you know, of like that he worked with Winona LaDuke on the Keep It in the
Pipeline
Ground.
map?
Yeah, you know, and it's like, this is what they really wanted. You know, it's like, so you know, it's like, you know, so how do they get it like that? They had to come in and clip everybody. They had to clip the women. They had to clip everyone from the woman, from the womb. They had to disconnect us, and they cut down our two-spirit people. They cut down all our women and everything that they fed. They had to cut down all the faith keepers and the medicine people and the clown societies and everything that held us, you know, as a people. And I said, and then they could manipulate the men. And they would marry up the women. Early on, they were marrying up the women so that the children of them would become the ruling body, the new government, so it became patriarchy.
Yeah.
So this is, and then they brought the missionaries in, and then they brainwashed everyone, and with fear and everything, all that stuff. So it's so, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with patriarchy within our own people, and they don't remember. A lot of people that are trying up here or not, I shouldn't say everyone, but there's quite a few elders that are trying to bring in tradition. But what they're doing is they're bringing it in through a very patriarchal and missionary type of mindset. Don't touch that. You don't do that. Those are the men's pipes. The women don't touch the drums. You sit over there. So it's like you're listening to a priest. You're not listening to a traditional elder. You're listening to what was handed to the people. So it's really hard. I mean, we're trying to get back to the natural law and the way of, because what we did follow was what was natural. So that's what we're dealing with that. So
There you go. Sorry about that. My internet jumped off.
so that's what it is. We're at war with patriarchy. The whole world is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so how do we, well, and what both of you are doing in your lives and the way you're spending this life really is supporting the matriarchy. I mean, both of you. I couldn't have picked. I mean, this is all by accident. So nobody seems to want. Everyone's too scared to join us live in our talking circle, which anyone can join. There's the StreamYard.com/PB27Q8TZXW. You can jump in, you'll go to the, check your mic, check your camera, then you'll pop into our green room. I'll bring you up with Nadema and Pura Fe. I think everybody's scared. Nobody's joining this conversation. It's a really intense conversation to have, and what both of you have done in your lives and careers have in a time where it hasn't been cool to do so. I mean, Nadema's doing art with breasts all over it and vaginas that you're calling it. You called it such a beautiful place. The spirit door, the
sacred door.
The sacred door.
The sacred door.
The sacred door. Both of you are doing things that kind of fly in the face of patriarchy, and I know have empowered other women, other Native women around you in such a strong way. I was, let's see, we've got Lance. Oh yes, Lance, you just want to watch. Great topic, good words. Yeah, Lance, you're just scared. You don't want to get up here with the aunties that they may give you a once over.
Well, the irony of the sacred door is that the male has to be in agreement. I mean, it can't happen in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I did that piece, my first piece called "The Virgin of Guadalupe is the Corn Mother," and it's just 4.5. You remember you saw that piece at the gallery?
My favorite piece.
That piece was, that was so special. And I mean, I had to have help. I had to have help from the other side to do these pieces because they come through me. I don't know. But that piece was inspired by something a man told me. And I said to him, I had to rectify our relationship, and we could no longer have that relationship. And I said, because that place is a sacred place. And that man agreed, yes, that's a sacred place. And it stayed in my mind that we were in agreement with this sacred place. I don't know. I don't know if I would have come up with it on my own. I don't know, but I know that what he said to me inspired me to do that piece. And the other thing was that, how the Christian missionaries, how they try to always culturally appropriate our spiritual traditions. And so my point was that the Virgin of Guadalupe was not the Catholic icon that was the mother of Jesus, but she was originally a goddess, an earth mother goddess of the Mexica people.
Mm-hmm.
So people used to go to Tepeyac to pay respects to her. There was a cave where they would bring offerings. So my point was to say that that the Guadalupe was an indigenous divinity. She was an indigenous goddess, and that just like the Cherokee have Selu, the corn mother, And I looked at the two of them and I said, they're a lot similar. And also the white buffalo calf woman and Guadalupe have a lot in common, because Guadalupe appeared at the center of the Western Hemisphere and in a sacred time, in a sacred space. And the star constellation that was in the sky that night of her appearance appears on her mantle. She's a codex. And then the white buffalo calf woman who gave the sacred pipe to the Lakota people, she appeared at the center of Turtle Island. And they say things about the white buffalo calf woman, that she can speak any language. Just, but she was actually technically a maiden, a white buffalo calf maiden. And so she came to the Lakota people and she gave them instructions, and Guadalupe came to the Mexica people who were at the point of being murdered by the Spaniards. And she said to them, and they recognized her because what her iconography was indigenous. So, the whole story goes that the story goes that she appeared to this man named Juan Diego. And Juan Diego wasn't some little guy, that was working in the fields, a peasant. He was a family of people who were spiritual people, priests. And so she appeared to him a couple of times. And then finally she said, take these roses to the bishop, because there were roses, and roses didn't grow in wintertime, but she had these roses that she said she wanted him to show the miracle of the roses. And when Juan Diego took the roses, he pulled all the roses inside of his tunic, his tilma, which is made of fiber from the maguey cactus plant. It doesn't last very long. And he grabbed it, and then when he got to the bishop and he opened up his tilma, her image was her image was there. And no one to this day can figure out how it got there. There's no scientific proof of how, they can't figure out anything. But yeah. And so the indigenous people became Catholic. They had a mass conversion into Catholicism, but they always, have reverence for the Guadalupe, because they understand at the core that she's the indigenous manifestation. and that at the same time she could be both, but she's definitely some entity that has chosen me. I mean, she chooses you. You don't choose her. So I didn't grow up I didn't grow up Mexican or Catholic, and she came into my life. I was middle aged woman when she came into my life, but she made a big impression. So I did actually go to Mexico to visit the shrine, and the original place is all the way up on top of a major hill, the original church that they had. But and so yeah, we have a society that is controlled. The masculine powers are stronger than the feminine powers, and for us to get to the point where there's balance, that's going to be, and it's not just for indigenous people, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Because the society is so really sick. And the fact that, the African American and Native American people are the black and the red. We're on the same axis, the horizontal axis and then the white and the yellow, which is the Caucasian and Asian, is on the vertical axis. And it makes complete sense that the tribal people, the African and Native people, are oppressed because we're on the maternal axis, and the male axis, the paternal axis, is overpowering, and what we have to do is to bring that balance back. And I feel like part of my work for indigenous people and all people is to bring that feminine consciousness back. I mean, people had it. People in Ireland, they have the Shillala gig, which is like my work, because I had an Irish friend who came to the opening, and she says, "Oh, that reminds me of what we have in Ireland." And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "It's a Shillana gig, is what it's called." You Google that, and you see these is female figures that have these vaginas that they hold them open to ward off evil.
Mm.
So I was like showing them to my Catholic Irish friends. They were freaking out because, and I said, "But this is in your culture. This is something that's from Ireland. It's not something I invented, you know." But people have to rematriate themselves. Our society has to rematriate. Our men have to rematriate. I mean, they have to understand that women. I mean, I think at one point the indigenous men, some of them really get it, and I'm lucky to know some men like that. Unfortunately, I've known too many men that didn't get it, but we do have our men in our communities that get it, because they understand that from traditional times they got it. They knew back then. But then when the Europeans came and imposed their ideas upon our societies, it got twisted. But we've got to go back to the way we were.
Yeah.
And going backwards is not always wrong. You have to step backwards in order to make a big leap. You know what I mean? So you got to go back, and then you make that big leap.
Yeah.
And I think that at my core, that's what makes me so resilient and strong, is that understanding of our traditional people and how incredibly beautiful and powerful we have been. And when I meet people that are indigenous people that have reconnected with that spiritual traditional, they're so powerful, they're so strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm attracted to those kind of people. So those are the people that I keep company with.
Mm-hmm.
And as we make alliances, with people, especially it hurts my heart to see all these young Black men getting murdered almost every other day, and all those Black mothers that are grieving the loss of their children. And I understand it because, you know, we're on that axis, that female axis. Because when you see this cross, that it sort of divides the medicine wheel. So the male is there, the female is there, and then the four sacred colors. But in Black Elk's vision, he makes it very, very clear. And if you haven't read Black Elk's vision, I think you should, because it's not that long and it's very, very powerful. And you understand, you know, the alliance between Hitler and Hirohito, because they were both on the same axis, you know. So you understand things as the way that they are. But like I said, it's time for the feminine power to come into being more influential. It's time, because I don't know if you've ever heard this book. It's a real interesting book. It's called When God Was a Woman. And it talks about human society this is the length of time we've lived. Okay, let's just say this is the length of time we've lived, right? This is the length of time that God has been a woman, and this is the length of time that God has been a man. It's a very short time in our human history. But in that short time, there's been too much destruction and violence. So we have to go back to the way it was when God was a woman. And then this way, we can be even more balanced when God is both a woman and a man, or neither. But we have to have that equal, you know, that balance.
Yeah, definitely. We are going to be, Red Hoop Talk is going to be moving into some other programming that Pura is going to be a part of, about women in the drum and women in songs and ceremony, and how women have kind of been shunned or kept out of those places. And so next week we're going to have kind of so it's interesting that we're having this kind of, it's kind of a pre-discussion, isn't it, Pura?
I guess it is.
That will lead us into to next week's show, Nadema. So this is like perfect. And it's you know, and it's controversial. It's controversial because even though we talk about how our cultures are diverse and they're not static, right? They're always changing. At the same time, we tend to put ourselves in little boxes, and that, well, you're only Indian if you do it this way. And putting boxes around ceremony, putting boxes around tradition as if it never, ever, ever changes. And I think there's a component of structure that is consistent, but I think, you know, dreaming, ceremony, all of those things, you know, change just like the environment around us. I mean, how can, so if there's a movement today of Indigenous women who feel their places at the drum, how can we deny that? How can we say that's a bad thing? If that's and it's not just happening in one place, it's happening all over Indian country, right? Yeah. I mean, women's places are changing. I remember, and I'm not gonna name tribes because I hate to do that, because I have friends in all these places, and I would never want to disrespect anybody. But you know, tribes who lift themselves up as being a matriarchal society, but yet those men don't listen to the women who are over there, who are supposed to be telling them what to do. You know, you know, it's just, it's really interesting to me how patriarchy, it just is almost like a disease.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that because men are not a disease. Men are not,
No.
you know, this is not about men bashing.
No.
It's something else. It's about power. And because men have physical power, they have to contend with not using power and not using physical power. I mean, I don't know where am I going with this conversation?
In some ways, it's about authority.
Yeah.
You know, because we have power. We always have power. We never lose our power. We've lost our authority.
Mm.
And this patriarchy, this type of patriarchy that came here, is all about that. It's about authority and taking over, so that they can redirect our power or pull a wool over our eyes, that we feel that we have no power, that we're powerless. They're trying to hide our power so they can take everything they can as fast as possible. And that's just snapping the finger and telling these girls, wake up. You know, you got the power, hurry up, wake up, because you got it, sister. They've been lying to you all this time, And so the same for our men. It's the same thing. Wake up, man. You know the deal. It ain't about this, We're losing everything because of that. And even our patriarchal societies that we had back in the day were not about gobbling up women and telling them what to do. It was a totally different mindset. Everything. It wasn't about destroying women and the earth.
Right. Is this true? Lance says a woman killed Custer. Is that true?
A bunch of women, Northern Cheyenne women. They were the ones that, they did it to him. He was married to a Cheyenne woman. You know that, right? Custer?
Yeah, I think I've heard that at some point. I didn't. Wow.
They did him in. Don't you remember they showed that part? And Buffy narrated that. And they said they took an awl and put it in, cleaned his ears out so he would hear. And they took his tongue out, and they totally messed him up.
There's the story. Hey, we have another person to add here. Allie, are you on camera? Allie, there she is.
I can be. Hi. Hi. Hello, women.
Hi, sweet
Hi,
eyes.
Native women. How are you?
Good.
We're having a little delay in your internet. Go ahead, Allie. Tell us who you are. Remind everyone who you are. You've been on the show before.
I'm on the Wi-Fi. I have. Yes, I have. Thanks for inviting. Sorry, I'm a little bit late and not particularly well dressed and in the dark. I'm Allie Joseph. I'm Shinnecock Nation from the eastern shores of Long Island. We are the people of the Stony Shore, and I am not on. Oh, thank you for the lighting, my husband. It's my crew. I am Shinnecock, and I grew up as what I like to call a city Indian. I grew up between New York City and the Res, where my grandmother lived, and many of my relatives, of course. And as an adult, I have spent a lot more time there and brought my children and my family there, my husband there, and made sure that they culturally are integrated into tribal life and activities as much as possible, even though I'm not always there. And I'm glad to talk about spring renewal. If we're still talking about that, I'm always interested in minor tweaks and reinventions and trying to clear out cobwebs.
Yeah, well, our conversation is spring
And
renewal.
of course,
It's kind of, uh-oh. So sorry, Allie. There's a little delay, so I don't mean to jump on top of your words. My shirt here seems to have been a good choice for tonight. We were talking about spring renewal, spring rebirth, and ceremonies and the things we do to kind of come out of the dark, whether it's during this time of year where everything is growing and budding, or just in our lives when we hit a rough patch, how we come out of it. And what the conversation has been about rematriation. It's been about bringing back the feminine, and so we have been talking about rebirth and regeneration, just not in how I thought the conversation would go. So it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. Allie, you've got a do you want to add anything, or have you been thinking about anything today? Oh, she's putting on.
I had muted myself in case there's a delay. I don't know why there's a delay. I think that it's always important to remember where we came from and our sort of essential gifts and blessings as women, and particularly as everything regrows and is birthed, and we have seen so much loss in so many of our communities in the past year around COVID in particular, that I think a sense of readdressing your own connection to your traditional ways, your health, and also your elder stories is really important. And also having a sense of gratitude for what we can continue to go through just as Native people, but community.
Yeah.
It's very weird to be on a delay. I'm like waiting, and then you nod. Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good, Allie. You're good. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm not going to put Pura on the spot, but I know Pura, you may know Alicia Nevaquea. Maybe she's a Choctaw woman. And she wants to hear a song from Pura, and of course you, Shannon. There's no way in hell you'll get it from me, Alicia. But I'll throw that at Pura in case she wants to give us some tunes. But don't let us put you on the spot, Pura.
Okay.
Yeah. So don't.
Oh, I wasn't planning on it.
Then don't worry about it. We'll get you. You'll
Okay.
probably, I'm sure, do some kind of singing or drumming for us next week, maybe.
I bet you we won't even have time. That's going to be a smoking. There's all those women. They've got a lot to say. So
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
yeah, I'd rather hear that. And you can get a song on YouTube anytime, right?
That's true. Yes, go to is it purafe.com?
Yeah,
Go
that's
to her website and get some music. I have been it's your music and Eulalie has been kind of my soundtrack for quite some time, and so it really helps to. And music, I don't know how you all feel about music, but music for me helps me stay in balance. It helps me feel the right way. It helps me go in the directions I need to go. It really has a lot of power for me. And it helps me change my attitude about life. All I need to do, I think anyone has experienced that. You put on the right song and it transports you to another place. And Indigenous women singing, I think, is the most powerful thing. And Pura's voice, It's just, woo, gets me up there somewhere. So thank you for the work that you've done in your music, Pura. I'm always feel so lucky to be in the same room with you.
Thank you.
Allie, are you raising your hand?
Raising a
I
finger.
am. Am I supposed to do that? I don't know. I don't use the, does this have a raise your hand tool like Zoom? I don't know.
No, it's not Zoom. It's not
I'm less
Zoom.
familiar. All right. The delay is,
It's a little
no,
better.
I know. Is it, hi, Nadema. It's so nice to see you. I'm getting blind in my older years, so it took me a minute. And then I'm like, oh, it's Nadema, but we're all in delay. So I'll just have to say this. Alongside, I had to get my thoughts together for a moment because I'm shifting from, like other unrelated to Native work I'm doing and have to sort of get my head around things for folks who are watching. I realized I didn't give much of an intro, just said who I was. I am privileged to be working with Shannon and the Council of Advisors for AIA this year as the new chair of the council to help support the organization in the year as we face it in the next quarters and however long they'll have me in dedicating some time and thought equity to supporting the association's initiatives. So that's how I come to AIA, and I have been on the Council of Advisors for quite a few years now prior to being asked to step into this role. And I am outside of AIA a producer and writer, journalist. And I was excited to hear recently through my old sort of mentor and respected elder, Shirley Sneevy, for those of us who are in the media and performing arts / film community. Perhaps you're all familiar with Shirley, but if not, is everyone familiar with Shirley? I know I'm on delay, so I'll stop talking. No, Shirley Sneevy was until the past year the executive director of Vision Maker Media, which is an esteemed and obviously long-running organization to advance Native film and television, public television for public television. And so I've known Shirley for many years, and she helped mentor me as a producer a long time ago. And I saw her post an opportunity that I'm very interested in, and I'm thinking about it. But it is through a women's media foundation that I have been a mentor of to mentees who are younger journalists of color, women of color. The International Women's Media Foundation has a new initiative where they are looking for a director. If anyone listening or watching, participating, wants to forward this information, it's an opportunity as we tell stories of those who cannot, which is always part of my strongest interest in any country, whether alive, no longer with us, ancestors or current elders. But there's a new initiative that they are looking for a director of to spearhead a large grant in the millions of dollars for MMIWG. And I got really excited about that. They're looking for a director of this new initiative that's sponsored by a huge foundation. It's like a $10 million multi-year initiative to raise the profile of missing murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I thought, wow. Well, talk about opportunities to share important stories of our community that are generally overlooked by the media. And as the media, I'm excited to see that develop, whoever ends up in the role, whether I apply for it or not. But I just wanted to share that opportunity. It's posted now. And if anybody wanted to message me, or you can certainly find it online. But that's exciting that large foundations are seeing the import of telling our missing relatives' stories in this way, and really giving it a global profile as it should have. To me, that's kind of renewal, right? Taking the resources and the privilege that we have and trying to use it to help those who cannot benefit directly.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I'm looking at Vision Maker Media now to see if they have posting for
Well,
that.
Shirley is so they don't. It's not. She posts. I mentioned Shirley.
Okay.
She's very well known in film in Indian country, and particularly in public television, because she held that role for a really long time and was amazing in the job, and has helped so many young Native filmmakers find their voice and funding to tell our stories. But she posted it on the Vision Maker Media Facebook page, I believe. But I'm looking for it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it on the
yeah.
I know
I can
Shirley
look
because
for
I
it,
know
Shannon,
her
and I
mom
can-
too. Did you hear me, Allie?
Mhm.
I know Shirley. When I was
Yes,
a
I
young
do.
girl, I illustrated
I
her
do hear
mom's book.
Can you hear me? It's a delay.
I can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Did you hear what I said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I did.
Whew. Well, that's
So-
amazing opportunity for not just the people who are involved in that, but those issues, and to get that kind of to have that kind of vision and that kind of money put behind that. Amazing. $10 million can do a lot of things.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be reaching out to you about that under separate cover, Shannon, so we can chat about it. Because part of the role is forming partnerships with news organizations and other Native organizations with connections to these stories throughout Indian country, which is why they are actively seeking a Native journalist and administrator to run this initiative.
Yeah. Wow.
So, exciting stuff.
Very good. Very good. So, what do you all know about spring renewal ceremonies? Have you all, like, for example, my nation is one of those now patriarchal nations. It has been taken over by the men. I don't know when the last woman leader was in the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. The Mississippi Band of Choctaws had a female chairwoman recently. What was I trying to ask? I had my second COVID shot yesterday, and last night I was so sick. I took a couple of Tylenol before the show because I felt the headache coming back on. So I still feel a little spacey. So I think I just lost my train of thought. But I was talking about my nation. I did not learn from my nation about any spring renewal ceremonies. There was nothing my grandmother could give me about that. Because, her family comes from a family that was burdened by the boarding schools and removal of language through the boarding schools. And then our Choctaw Nation has declared itself a Christian nation. So we don't much talk about those things. I've learned more about spring renewal from other tribes and the different ceremonies that they use during either the spring solstice or different times this year as different things grow. Do you all have any experience with spring ceremony or spring renewals? Nadema's raising her hand.
Okay. For the Lakota, that's the first day of spring, which is the spring equinox.
Yes, equinox. Sorry, not solstice.
It's the first day of spring.
Yes.
Is the Lakota New Year, and also on that day in Mexico, in Yucatan Peninsula, in Chichen Itza, there's a phenomenon that occurs called the phenomenon of light and dark. And on the pyramid of the Mayan pyramid, at a certain time of day, there's a light. The light hits the pyramid. What forms is a snake of light and a snake of shadow, light and dark. At the same time, in Medicine Wheel, Wyoming, the 28 stones, which is an important place during the equinoxes, the stones light up. So there's definitely a strong, powerful time, the spring equinox. And of course, the summer solstice with, the Lakota people have the Sundance. So we always kind of follow the seasons. And so I made it my business to go to Medicine Wheel, Wyoming. It wasn't during the spring equinox, but it was after I had recovered from an illness, and the traditional elders told me that our people would go to Medicine Wheel to, make an offering. So I was a repatriation director for Standing Rock Sioux Tribe at the time. My son and I drove to Billings, Montana for one of our meetings, and Medicine Wheel, Wyoming was within 3 hours. So we drove there, and they told us, when you get up there, bring winter clothes because it's going to be cold. So we went up the mountain all the way to the top, and this was in August, and we had to put on winter clothes. And when it was just a scary experience driving up there, and there were no guardrails or anything, and we were like going, like straight up the mountain. And I remember my son saying, "Mom, look at the view." And I said, "No, I'm not going to look at the view. I'm just going to look at the yellow line on the highway," because I was freaking out. It was really scary. And when I came back down, I said, "Now I know how Moses felt," because I think I had got about 10 more gray hairs just, going there. But we went there because I had to, pay respect. And I left my offering and to thank the Creator for my curing, because when I was ill, I had people go to the Sundance and pray for me there. But the other place is Chichen Itza. I went there at the spring equinox because I was told by a brother from the Mexica Nation, the descendants of or the ancestors, his ancestors were Mexica. He was actually a Chicano from California, but he told me that I needed to go there. And then I met a Mayan man in New York, and he also told me I needed to go there. So I went there. And I have to tell you, it really changed my life. I mean, it was just life altering to experience something like that. And while I was there, there were just so many echoes of what was happening in Mayan country, and what I recognized as, the four sacred colors of the Lakota. There were so many things that were so similar to the North American tribal communities, that there was this strong connection between, I felt this strong connection between the people there and the people in, what is the continental United States. And that the only difference between us was that our colonizers spoke English and their colonizers spoke Spanish. That was the only difference I felt between our people. And when we get beyond those borders, and start this sense of the unification of the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere and the Pacific Islanders. I mean, every year I used to go to the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. It was so empowering because there were so many indigenous people from all over the world. And being part of that community was so empowering. It's like, yeah, I'm part of this worldwide community of indigenous people, and the stories of Aboriginal Australian people, the Tongans, the Samoans, the Hawaiians. I mean, it was just like this one big family reunion. And at the core, we have this sense of our indigenousness and indigeneity that we have, and we all recognize each other's. We see that we're family, that because I was at a conference in Seattle and we were sitting at the table with people from 6 nations, and there were Samoan people sitting there, but they didn't identify themselves as Samoan. And so after we had dinner, they said, we're going to the American Indian Education workshop. So then the guy from 6 Nations said, well, aren't they going to go too? He thought they were Native Americans. I thought that was quite remarkable, that he picked up on that sense of commonality. Mm-hmm. And in 1980, in Puerto Rico, we had the first Indigenous conference. A lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people didn't go to it, but I was there, and we had people from Samoa. We had people from Minnesota. We had people from Seattle. We had people from, I was the only person from New York. We had people from Oklahoma. All these were Native American people. And then we met in, because I think the Samoans were from American Samoa, but we all met for this conference. It was organized by Denny Leonard, who's from Warm Springs. And it was phenomenal. And it was so beautiful. We were in Puerto Rico, which was Boriquen, which is the land of the Taino. And we went to Utuado, which is up in the mountains. And we had a Hopi elder who was in charge of deciding who was going to be the 4 directions for the 4 direction prayer. And then we played, the North American Indians played against the Tainos. They played a ball game. So it was just beautiful. And the guys from Oklahoma, they said, man, this reminds me of back home. It was like everybody felt at home, everybody felt at home with each other. Mm-hmm. And I got to meet my cousin that I didn't know existed, and it turned out I had a cousin who was from Hawaii, and it turned out that his father didn't really mention it to him, but he said, one of our ancestors was a Native American who came from the mainland and who was an Agard. So that was that diaspora of the Agard family was in Hawaii. So I got to, meet my cousin and experience such a beautiful sense of family. Mm. And I miss going to the UN because it was like every year was like a battery, that needed to be recharged. And I don't know if any of you remember, I know that Pura Fe knows, our dear departed sister Ingrid, who was murdered in Colombia because she went to help set up a school for the indigenous people there. She died in 1999. But when we would go to the UN, and a lot of times the indigenous people said, but these people in the United Nations, these, bureaucrats or whatever, they have no integrity. And Ingrid says, yeah, but when we come, we bring integrity. And I never forgot that. She was a person that if you knew her, you knew she was real. She was authentic. And when she hugged you, she meant it. Mm-hmm. She was just, exceptional woman. Mm-hmm. So I I really feel that we have all of that. We just have to support each other and come together, and we have to gather and give each other energy. We have to gather.
Yep.
We have to come together like we're doing now, and on a greater scale. But we definitely, this is a hard world out there. So anytime I get together with Indigenous folks, it's always like a plus. It's always like a recharge of my batteries. It really is. And that's what we have to do. We have to constantly recharge our batteries and gather and share our beauty, because man, we are beautiful people.
Yeah.
And at the UN every year they would have this cultural night, and there would be Maoris doing haka, or there would be Aboriginal Australians, or there would be Bolivian indigenous people dancing their traditional dances. Every conceivable kind of indigenous person was there. People from Mongolia, people from East Africa, people from the Sami people from northern, Norway. So, I mean, it was just an incredible experience. And I hope that we can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And being Indigenous and raised, as a Native person, seeing other cultures share with you their dancing and their ceremony and other things, I think about, because I'm, heavily involved in repatriation issues, and what archaeologists think, and what museum curators think, and what anthropologists think, and having to kind of help to rewrite history about those perspectives. When those types of people look at our ceremonies and our dances, it's a spectacle to them.
Right.
It's a performance.
Right.
And they don't understand the context or the connection of what amazing thing is happening right there. It's not a performance. It's not a costume. That they're actually connecting with spirit, with Mother Earth, with all the elements, depending on what's happening and what their beliefs are. But there's something deep and important and spiritual happening. It's not just a performance. It's no less important than when the monks gather and meditate, right? I think of that on the mountain, right? We just do things a little differently. We like to get up and move around a little more than the Buddhist monks do. But I think that's so incredible, Nadema. You hit the nail on the head there. Describing that. So thank you.
I have to tell you something. When you were talking, it something popped into my head. I was at this conference, and it was People of Color conference, and we have a lot in common with other people of color, and particularly the Africans, because they have the power of that drum is so powerful. And I remember that we were all sitting and talking, and they hit the drum to get our attention. Well, the indigenous people, the people of color, just, they were okay. The non-indigenous people, the people of the non-Indians, the non-people of color, when he hit that drum, they jumped out of their seats. It scared them. They got scared. They freaking got scared.
They're coming for us.
Okay. And it reminds me of something that my neighbor said to me one day. I had my CD, I had Lakota drumming on, and knocked on my door for some reason to borrow sugar or whatever. And he says, "What is that noise?" And I said, "Excuse me, noise? That's my classical music." But it's just like it's a hard road, because you've got to also, empower yourself. First of all, that's the most important thing, because when I worked at the Museum of the American Indian for 7 years, I talked to classes every day for 7 years, and every day there would be somebody that would ask a really stupid question, or stereotypical comment. And then I said to myself, this is really wearing me down. I have to focus on my empowerment. And I really don't care if you don't know about us, because I'll know about us. And that's all that matters for me at that particular point. But it's really important, because it's an ongoing battle every single day. It's not like if you tell them something, they'll remember. It's like they constantly refer to the stereotypes, and it's like a very tiring thing. So like I said, it's important to empower ourselves first of all, and then we can deal with the ridiculous comments that non-natives make sometimes.
Yeah.
They're not even aware that it's so ridiculous, so much a part of the culture, that they don't feel like the questions they're asking are offensive, or and so I remember there was somebody that asked I don't know if it was one of the it was a Native woman writer or something, and they said, are you part Indian, or are you part whatever? And you don't look like you're a full-blood Indian. And so she turned around, she goes, "And you don't look like you're rude." But she made her point. But I was just like, the questions, sometimes you just want to winch, with it's coming, that it's going to come, because they start smiling and coming towards you. And I remember one time I was in full regalia, and these crazy French women started touching me all over, like they were grabbing my regalia and, "Oh, look," and touching and I had to tell them straight up, "Don't touch anything. You don't touch us like that. You just don't do that." Yeah, in France you can touch each other, because that's part of the culture. But I'm not entirely uneducated in continental European culture. I lived in Italy for one summer. I lived in Spain one summer. I've been to these countries, and I love the people. In their own world, where they had their culture functions for them. But when they're stepping outside of their culture, then you have to tell them, you're stepping outside of the culture. So, and I remember once I was at a powwow in New Jersey, and I was in full regalia, and these Italians came up and they said, "Can we take your picture?" And I looked at them and I said, "Where are you from?" And they said, "We Italian. We're Italian." I says, I said, io sono andata a Italia molti anni fa. I went to Italy so many years ago. They freaked out. That was like the moment of like having fun, with people and, their ideas of things. But I have another friend whose daughter lives in Italy, and she's Native American. And sometimes, we'll talk in Italian just for the hell of it, because it's fun. But it was really great what happened, that they came and they were telling the other people that they were with, "Oh my God, she speaks Italian. Oh my God," they were freaking out. But I told them I went to Italy. They were. I was happy to have them take my picture, to be honest with you, because they were very nice people. But yeah,
At least they asked.
huh?
At least they asked.
Yes, yes. That was the nice thing about it, is that they were decent enough to ask and not grab onto my regalia. I was like, these women were, I mean, they were just crazy. I was like freaking out. I was like, what are you doing? You know? But yeah, and another time, you know, I was somewhere, and I just really surprised someone because of what the expectations they had of me. And I like doing that. I like being in a situation where they are surprised. And then they learn something. Because when I went to Spain, my friend invited me to live with her family. And when I got to the little town where she lived, I was getting out of the bus and the guy pushed me aside and she says, well, where's the American? And she said to that guy in Spanish, you imbecile. She's the American. She's a real American. And so when I got out of the bus, the whole town was there. They were, I just thought everybody was on the plaza every night, but no, the whole town was there because they knew I was coming. And then they were asking me, how did I get out of the reservation? How did you know, escape? And I said, what do you mean? Well, you know, the Indians are living in reservations with barbed wire. And I says, no, I grew up in New York City, you know. And another time, my mom and I were at a wedding in Spain, and this Italian woman came up to me, and she says, who are you? Where are you from? And I said in Italian, io sono indiani americani. I'm American Indian. And those days, that's what we used. This was in the 60s or the 70s. We always used American Indian back there. So when she turned, she looked at me, she says, Indiane, con I fiumi, come la cinema, you know, and then she ran to her son and she goes, Giovanni, vieni qui. Vieni qui. She was so excited. She said, loro sono indiani con la cinema, con I fiumi. She was so funny. And my mother, you know, my mother didn't know Italian, you know, just, and everywhere we went, they would tell us that we were not North American, that we were South Americans. And they would say, where are you from? In Spanish. And I would say, you know, somos americanos. But you mean South American, right? No, we're North American. They couldn't conceive that we were North American. We had to be South American. South American has a larger indigenous population. So they could not conceive. So, you know, that was what happened when we traveled, that they would never. Well, one of the good things about that, when I traveled all over Europe, nobody ever thought I was American. And that worked to my favor. Yeah. Because a lot of times people didn't like Americans and then they would charge you more. So it worked to my favor. But no, I loved the time that I spent in Europe. I really loved it. But like I said, I enjoy the people in the context of their culture, and I don't expect them to understand my culture. And, you know, they shouldn't feel that I have to understand their culture, you know, respect each other. But yeah, it's really important. Ever since I can remember, I was a little girl, my father taught me, you know, that I was Native American, you know, that he didn't really say that I was better than other people, but he said, you're not like those people out there. You're a Native. Your people are, you know, so-and-so. And he referred to the Lakota side, because he was very, very much about the Lakota side. So he would say, your people are Blackfeet Sioux. And so, you know, I knew that since I was a little girl. You know, I was like inundated with that ever since. And then my mom's mother was Cherokee, and she would always, they were like, what you call Indian Amish. They didn't let anybody in the house, and you know, they didn't go anywhere. They might as well have lived on a reservation somewhere, because even though they were living in New York, it was like when you went into that apartment, it was like you in Indian country. And they were like very much about don't forget who you are, because they would feel that. And I would try to explain to people, you know, if you come from France or you come from China, you can forget who you are, because you can go back to China, or you can go back to France. But we can't go back anywhere. This is our homeland, and we can't forget who we are. We're not trying to be, you know, not friendly or, you know, neutral, but it was like drummed into our family. My grandmother drummed it into us. And I remember my brother would go out play basketball, and she would say, don't forget who you are, every other day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I grew up with that strong sense of who I am as an Indigenous person. And that it was something that I didn't grow up feeling like I was a second class citizen, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with that feeling growing up in New York. I grew up with the feeling like I'm special.
Mm-hmm. Well, and and the way that always made me feel, remember who you are, remember where you come from, also made me feel that I had something I needed to live up to, that it meant something. So special, or, but something that you had to live up to, that you almost owed, or you had an obligation to live up to, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think that's I'm very happy to try to live up to, because I feel like if I live an exemplary life, that I'm going to be a role model for the next generation. So I'm not going to go out there and do anything that's not dignified or disrespectful, and that people are going to judge me. I have to be a representative of my community. It's I know a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't have to, but the reality is that some of us have to. Some of us don't want to, but because of the ones that don't want to, we have to be out there, and we have to, because we've got to be strong. We've got to keep our community. We've got to keep our generations in the future.
Yeah.
So, and I know I'm a mother of a son, and my son is very culturally involved. I mean, he grew up in New York City, went to Bank Street School with all these yuppie kids and celebrity kids, and they wanted him to dress up for Thanksgiving with a paper feather. And I said, there's no way you're going to have my son dress up like that. So how I rectified the situation was that my son was a a traditional dancer when he was a little boy. So I said, what we'll do is that my son will perform. He'll perform for the school. And then that was in education. They didn't know anything about him and that he did that. And then we had the little rabbit dancers. They were all local Indian kids. And we used to do powwow kind of dances and go to schools. And I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I mean, besides my job at the museum, and then we had the little rabbit dancers who were like educating people on the weekend, and I was educating people on the weekdays. But it's about living your life as an Indigenous person, as a Native person. Just like, it's not a job,
Yeah, exactly. And I think most of us who work in our communities, that's exactly what it is. This is just, the framework of our societies are different now, but we're still, working for our communities. Yeah. So how you feeling over there, Pura?
Fine.
I'm thinking
It's
of
nice, it's
wrapping
nice
things.
to see Nadema. It's nice to see you. I
It's
want
nice to see you also. I'm so happy for you too,
Thank you.
for all the good things that have happened to you. And I follow your stuff on Facebook, so I'm good. Yeah, I'm glad to see you having a good life.
It's okay. It's a hard one, but it's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, so is mine. It's a hard one. But I look back at the things that I have and the people that I've met, and I have a neighbor, and she's on Facebook, and whenever I post something like I met this person, or I know, she goes, "Man, you know a lot of people." I mean, every time somebody posts something on Facebook, it's like I either know that person or I know I mean, our connection, like I was married to a Choctaw, and so that's the connection that I have with Shannon is, Jarito, because I know Choctaws really, Oklahoma Choctaws and Mississippi Choctaws. And then Allie's cousin is my son's partner. So, it's like we're all connected somehow,
Mhm.
we're all connected somehow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And and I know you related to a lot of what I had to say earlier, so because we're at the same wavelength,
Yeah.
And I think that this was supposed to happen, Shannon.
Mhm.
Nothing is outside of itself a coincidence,
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a coincidence. We just know that I don't know, today I had to just jump in there. I said, I got to get on with Shannon.
I'm glad you did. I was wondering if you were going to, because I've wanted to invite you, and I wanted to give you some time over the last little while here. But so happy to see you and still hear and see that fire that you have, Nadema. I'm so grateful to know you.
Yeah, because it was almost put out, I mean, I think I have, like the life of a cat has 9 lives. And I think that in that respect, I do, because I have always, gotten so bad to the brink of whatever and then come back. So, because about a month ago, what's today? May. About 2 months ago, I was not I could not have this conversation,
Wow.
So I'm very grateful to be back and to be strong, because they say a scar is stronger than your regular skin. So got a lot of scars,
Yeah.
but that makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's a pretty nice ending statement to end on, unless, Pura, if you wanted to say anything as we warm up into next week's show. I don't know.
No, I'm good. It was nice to sit here with you all and yeah, I wish you all well. And I know I'll see y'all again.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so I don't have anything planned to say to close us up tonight. I want to thank everyone who's joined us live tonight, and sorry that a couple of you gentlemen may have been a little bit too shy to get on and join the conversation with us, but that's okay. We're glad you're out there watching and listening. Invite you back next week at 7 p.m. Eastern next week, when we're going to have a show. We're still working out some of the details, called Grandmother's Drum, and we're going to talk about women in the drum. And we hope you can join us on that conversation. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on that thing called YouTube, and wherever else you do your internets, wherever you watch your internets. And until next week, everyone, good night, and thanks to the Association on American Indian Affairs for producing the show. All right, I am going to in broadcast, if I can find the right button. Here we go, I think.
Okay.